Welcome to our study through the book of John. We are in chapter 2, and we are going to look at the story and the narrative of Jesus' miracle at the wedding of Canaan. Now, at a basic level, this is just a story, and the story has a very simple structure to it. First of all, what we see is that it has a setting. And this setting is in verse 1, it is a wedding. The next thing that we see is there's a problem. Jesus' mother points out to him that they have run out of wine. Now here is, it's important for us to know a little bit about the background of first century weddings. First century weddings, the groom is responsible for hosting it, and he is personally responsible for the hospitality. And if the hospitality is found wanting, it is a cultural shame, so much so that you could open yourself up for lawsuits from family members of the bride, but also your reputation will be tarnished in that community, and you will be listed among thieves. So this is no small thing, but there is a problem. And then the story points out in verse 10 and verse 9 that there is a solution. Jesus used the water from the purification stone jars, and he turned them into wine, enough, more than enough, to actually solve the problem. But because this is not just a story, John calls this a sign in verse 11. The first of Jesus' public ministry, signs and miracles, there is a far deeper meaning to it. And in order for us to get to that, we need to know that a sign uses symbols. So what we need to try and think through is, what does each of these settings, problems and solutions mean on a deeper level? So let's first look at verse 1, where we look at the wedding. Now, weddings in Jewish culture is the high point, the ultimate expression of joy, of happiness. It is the polar opposite of what they use in their culture to express sadness, which is funerals. So a wedding is a fantastic ceremony, and it expresses joy, but it also has a biblical theme. In Isaiah 62 verse 5, it is said that weddings is something that is going to, or that God says that he is the bridegroom. So the picture of a wedding is being used not only to express joy, but also to be a symbol of God saying that he is the bridegroom, and his church, his people, will be the bride. So he says that he wants to have a very personal and intimate relationship with his people. So wedding imagery is very important in the Old Testament. The imagery is also important here in Canaan, and later on in the Gospels, where Jesus says he is that particular groom. But also at the end of the Bible, in Revelation, this same John that wrote this Gospel also wrote Revelation, and in Revelation 19, 7 and 9, there is a feast. There is a wedding feast of the Lamb. So weddings is a mightily important part of this sign, and it is a sign that says that Jesus is going to do something. He is going to restore people's joy in a way that is just unparalleled. The other thing that we should look out for as a sign and find its deeper meaning, because of the way that John is describing it in so much detail in verse 6, is the stone jars, the kind used by the Jews for ceremonial washing. These stone jars are explained in particular detail. The question is then, why did Jesus not use any other ordinary instrument or vase or holder to put the wine in? Why didn't he use the old wineskins that were and just put water into that? But he was very specific to say, I want to use these stone jars used by the Jews for ceremonial washing. And the reason he used them is because he wanted to show something. He wanted to send a message to his hearers, to his audience, and saying, this is what I'm all about. These stone jars represents, and the water within them represents the ceremonial washings, the purification rites of the Old Testament. They are going to be replaced. So there's the water, and the water is going to be replaced in verse 9 by wine. And if we read further on in the Gospels, when Jesus went to the Lord's Supper, he says, and he broke the bread and he poured the wine. He said that the bread is his body, the water is, or the wine is his blood. So he says he is going to replace this water, these old rituals, with himself. He is the wine. There is a better way in which he is going to cleanse people from shame, from guilt, from sin, and that is the almost the key sign, the key sign that we should look out for in this parable or in this miracle. The fact that Jesus has used those stone jars. The next thing that we can need to wonder about is also in verse 6. It's the amount of wine, the amount that Jesus is providing. 20 to 30 gallons now. In liters, that's anything between 500 and 700 liters. And no matter how big the wedding is, that is a tremendous amount. It's an abundance of wine. And what Jesus is saying is, whatever his offer is, whatever his means of purification is going to be, it's going to be in abundance. The joy he's going to bring is in abundance. The way that he is going to solve the social shame and cleanse people from their sin and guilt is going to be in abundance. And now the question is, how is he going to do that? And that we find in Jesus' reference in verse 4 to my hour has not yet come. And that is a very significant section. It's a very significant statement. My hour has not yet come always refers to Jesus' death. His death is always in the back of his mind. Throughout the whole book of John, he says, my hour has not yet come. And then when, after Lazarus is raised from the dead, the Pharisees plots to kill Jesus, and then he knows, and he changes the sentence, and he says, now I know my hour has come. The hour that my Father has prepared for me. The way that Jesus is going to replace the old rituals of cleansing is by dying. And the question now is that this story, although it is a sign, although it's just a story, the deeper meaning is that not only does it have a setting, not only does it have a problem and a solution, it has a very significant result. The result is what John was aiming for. The fact that Jesus is pointing out the importance of his death, the importance of him replacing, fulfilling in abundance what the Old Testament was all pointing towards, the purification of sin, now has a particular result. And that result is that the sign is revealing his glory. And it caused the disciples to believe in him. Now, many people can see his glory, and I'm sure there were people at that particular wedding who saw his glory, but it never led them to believe. So seeing God's glory, seeing Jesus' glory here is one thing, but if it doesn't lead you to believe in him, to trust in him, to take this this death, this fulfillment, this new abundant way of receiving purification for your sin, if it doesn't lead to faith, then this sign has not yet grabbed hold of you. Then you don't understand the whole point of why Jesus has revealed his glory. He has not just come to do a miracle. He has come to do a miracle so that we can see his glory, so that we can believe in him. And then Revelation 19 will become true for us. At the end of time, one day when this world will be replaced by a new world that Jesus is going to establish, then we can be part of the ultimate wedding, the ultimate feast with Jesus as the bridegroom, and we are his bride, and we are going to have joy in abundance. Let's think about that. Let's not just stop at wondering in God's revealed glory, but let's put our trust in him so that our sins can be forgiven and that we can have life in abundance.